"Rose!" Mike's voice thundered, startling her. Rose froze, dropping the cucumber as if it burned her. Scrambling to cover herself, her face turned pale with shame. "Mike, I can explain." Mike's expression was a mix of anger and confusion. "Explain what?" Rose was breathtakingly beautiful. Her flawless skin and graceful manner caught everyone's attention. But her beauty wasn't the only thing people noticed. She was smart, funny, and driven. However, when it came to love, she hadn't been very lucky. She had been in a few relationships, some good, some bad, but none lasted long enough to plan a future. Then she met Mike. Mike was different. He was every woman's dream. Rich, charming, generous, and caring. He owned several successful businesses, and everyone in the city knew his name. From the moment he met Rose, he couldn't stop admiring her. He showered her with attention, gifts, and sweet words that melted her heart. But Mike had a secret, one he didn't fully understand. Every woman he had been with left him eventually, no matter how much he cared for them. They accepted his gifts and enjoyed his money, but in the end, they walked away without giving him a clear reason. Mike assumed it was bad luck in love. What he didn't know was that it had to do with his small manhood. When Mike started dating Rose, she felt incredibly lucky. He treated her like a queen and gave her everything she could dream of. For a while, she thought he was perfect. But her perspective changed the night they became intimate for the first time. Rose was nervous but excited, expecting Mike to take charge and sweep her off her feet. Instead, she was left confused and disappointed. Mike's manhood was much smaller than she had imagined. Rose tried to hide her feelings and pretended everything was fine, afraid of losing such a wonderful man over something beyond his control. As time went on, Rose grew more uneasy. Every time they were intimate, she faked her emotions. Mike, unaware of how she truly felt, seemed happy and proud of himself. He would smile at her afterward, completely satisfied, while she fought back frustration. Despite her disappointment, Rose couldn't ignore how perfect Mike was in every other way. He constantly showed her he cared, surprising her with flowers, planning romantic trips, and ensuring she never had to worry about anything. When he proposed in a grand, unforgettable way, a private yacht dinner with fireworks lighting up the sky, Rose couldn't say no. She accepted his proposal with tears in her eyes, silently promising herself that she would find a way to make their marriage work, no matter the challenges. Their wedding was the event of the year. Guests came dressed to impress, and the decorations sparkled like a scene from a fairy tale. Rose looked breathtaking in her white gown, and Mike couldn't stop smiling as she walked down the aisle. They exchanged vows, promising to love each other forever. Married life started on a high note. As always, Mike went out of his way to keep Rose happy. He bought her a stylish new car, gave her a generous monthly allowance, and made sure she never wanted for anything. At first, Rose was thrilled. She loved the luxury, the attention, and the affection. But over time, Rose began to feel dissatisfied. No matter how wonderful the gifts and money were, they couldn't distract her from the emptiness she felt in their intimate moments. She knew she couldn't ignore the issue forever, but she also didn't know how to address it. Mike's ego was fragile, and she didn't want to hurt the man who had given her so much. Instead of confronting Mike, Rose decided to find her own solution. She thought about buying a discreet pleasure device, but she worried Mike might discover it and understand what it meant. Late one night, as she scrolled through her phone, an unusual idea popped into her mind. She remembered reading somewhere that cucumbers could work as substitutes for pleasure devices. At first, the idea seemed silly, but the more she thought about it, the more it seemed like a perfect solution. Cucumbers were everyday items. Mike would never suspect a thing if he saw them in the house. The next day, Rose went to the market on a mission. She carefully picked out cucumbers, choosing ones that seemed just right for her needs, making sure to get different sizes. Once home, she stored them in the fridge to keep them fresh. Whenever Mike left for work, Rose would take one of the cucumbers and retreat to their bedroom for privacy. Afterward, she would clean up thoroughly, cutting the used cucumber into pieces and discarding it in a small black bag. This routine became her little secret, something she fiercely protected. Rose convinced herself it wasn't wrong. She wasn't cheating, she thought, just finding a way to fill the void Mike couldn't. But secrets don't stay hidden forever. Mike started noticing something strange. No matter how many cucumbers he ate, the fridge always seemed to have more. The cucumbers in the fridge weren't just any cucumbers. They were all different sizes, almost as if Rose was experimenting. One evening during dinner, Mike decided to ask, "Rose, my love, why do we always have so many cucumbers in the fridge? Are you trying a new recipe I don't know about?" Rose's heart raced, but she forced herself to stay calm. She couldn't let him know the truth. Laughing nervously, she replied, "Oh, it's nothing like that. I use them for detoxing and keeping my skin glowing. You've noticed how radiant I look lately, haven't you?" She smiled confidently, hoping her explanation would satisfy him. Mike, always adoring, replied, "Of course, my queen. You always look beautiful." But instead of leaving it at that, Mike embraced the idea. "That's a great tip," he said. "I'll start eating more cucumbers too. Health is wealth." Rose froze, unsure what to say. Before she could think of an excuse, Mike stood up, took a cucumber from the fridge, washed it, sliced it, and ate it right there at the table. "This is good," he said with a satisfied nod. Rose forced a smile, her mind racing. She had managed to keep her secret, but now her husband was eating the very cucumbers she had been using for her private moments. As Rose's new habit became her escape, she found herself avoiding intimacy with Mike. It wasn't that she didn't love him, she did, in her own way. But every time he tried to get close, she felt dread. She couldn't pretend anymore, and the thought of faking her feelings made her uncomfortable. "Are you okay, my love?" Mike asked one night as they lay in bed. He stroked her hair gently, his voice full of concern. Rose gave him a small, apologetic smile. "I'm just tired, my love. I've had cramps all day." Mike sighed and kissed her forehead. "You should rest. Let me know if you need anything." This became her go-to excuse. Cramps, headaches, back pain, or the classic, "I'm on my period." Mike, being the understanding and caring husband he was, never pressured her. He simply held her close, unaware of the real reason she was avoiding intimacy. When Mike left for work in the mornings, Rose's day would begin. She would clean the house, shop for groceries, and cook his favorite meals. But the part she looked forward to most was being alone. When the house was quiet, Rose would go to the fridge, pick the perfect cucumber, and retreat upstairs to her private space. In those moments, she felt completely free and in control of her pleasure. She told herself it was harmless. After all, she wasn't cheating with another man. This was her little secret, her way of coping with the one part of her marriage that left her unfulfilled. One evening, as they sat in the living room, Mike looked up from his phone and said, "I have a business trip tomorrow. I'll be gone for a week." Rose's heart leapt with joy, but she quickly masked it with a look of concern. "A whole week? That's so sudden. Are you sure you'll be okay?" Mike smiled. "Of course, my love. It's just a quick meeting with a new client. I'll be back before you know it." Rose nodded, pretending to be upset about his trip, but deep down, she was thrilled. A week alone meant she could enjoy her private fantasies without interruptions. The next morning, she helped Mike pack, walked him to the car, and kissed him goodbye. "Travel safely, my love. I'll miss you," she said, waving as he drove away. The moment she closed the door, a sly smile spread across her face. She went straight to the fridge, grabbed her favorite cucumber, and hurried upstairs, already lost in anticipation. Lying on the bed, Rose indulged in her secret. The room was filled with soft sighs and gasps as she let herself go. She had no idea that downstairs, Mike was fumbling with his keys, having returned to retrieve his forgotten passport. Entering the quiet house, Mike called out, but there was no response. Assuming she was upstairs, he climbed the stairs. That's when he heard it, a series of muffled sounds that stopped him in his tracks. Mike's heart pounded. He recognized Rose's voice, but the sounds she was making were unfamiliar. His chest tightened as a dark thought crossed his mind. Could she be with another man? He tiptoed to the bedroom door and gently pushed it open. His eyes scanned the room, and what he saw left him frozen. There, on their bed, was Rose, tangled in the sheets, her face flushed with pleasure. In her hand was a cucumber, the same one he had seen in the fridge earlier that day. "Rose!" Mike's voice thundered, startling her. Rose froze, dropping the cucumber as if it burned her. Scrambling to cover herself, her face turned pale with shame. "Mike, I can explain." Mike's expression was a mix of anger and confusion. "Explain what? That my wife has been sneaking around with a vegetable? Is this what you do when I'm not here?" Tears filled his eyes. Rose couldn't look at him. "I'm sorry, Mike. I didn't mean for you to find out like this." Mike's voice softened slightly, though his frustration was still evident. "Why, Rose? Why would you do this? Am I not enough for you?" Rose buried her face in her hands, her voice trembling. "I don't want to hurt you, Mike, but your manhood is too small. I've tried to ignore it, but I can't." Rose's words hit Mike like a punch to the gut. "I didn't know how to tell you without breaking your heart," she stammered. Mike stood in shock. None of his exes had ever mentioned this before. As he replayed his past breakups, a chilling thought crossed his mind. Could this have been the reason all along? Without saying another word, Mike grabbed his passport and left, slamming the door behind him. Driving to the airport, Mike was overwhelmed by humiliation, betrayal, and inadequacy. Yet beneath the pain, he couldn't ignore the possibility that Rose might be right. By the time he reached his hotel, his anger had softened into sadness. He ignored Rose's calls, unable to face her. That night, lying awake, Mike reflected deeply on his marriage and his past. For the first time, he saw a pattern. Had all the women he loved endured this in silence? The next morning, Mike woke up determined. He loved Rose and wanted to fix their relationship. He began researching ways to improve intimacy, reading articles, and even consulting a counselor who reassured him that size didn't define a man's ability to please his partner. Throughout his trip, Mike called Rose every night. His gentle tone surprised her. Instead of blaming or accusing her, he reassured her. "Marriage is about understanding each other, Rose. I promise to do better," he said. Rose cried tears of relief. "Thank you, Mike. I'm so sorry for hurting you. I'll support you however I can." When Mike returned, Rose greeted him with a warm hug. "I missed you," she whispered. "I missed you too," Mike replied, kissing her forehead. That night, they talked openly for the first time in months, sharing their feelings without fear of judgment. Mike told her about the steps he was taking to improve himself, and Rose promised to be patient and supportive. Later, as they lay together, they took their time rediscovering each other. For the first time in months, Rose felt truly connected to her husband. In the weeks that followed, their love grew deeper. The cucumbers, once a source of secrecy and shame, were no longer needed. Rose threw them away, choosing to focus on the man who loved her enough to change for her. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day, and soon their home was filled with the laughter of children, a testament to the love they had rebuilt. Though their journey had been rocky, their love emerged stronger than ever. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, like, share your thoughts in the comments, and share this video with your loved ones. Click on this next interesting story.